Well, I wish that the same question, we have had that question in the 90s, the beginning of the 90s. So much concern of the legalities, implications to recognize another country. If the same, Bosnia in any way, shape, or form, President Hong, how can you do that? This is an old country. It's been there forever. There were not that kind of concerns at that time. There are today. Why are there concerns? Concerns fundamentally Russia. And why Russia? They have several things on their own borders. Remember that Russia is afraid of the Chechnya issue, of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. They have their own border problems, which for them are serious. They have 2 miles of borders with China, and you have 30 million Muslims bordering 1 billion Chinese. They are afraid that Kosovo might be a very serious precedent. They're beginning to say that the Spanish will be concerned too because of the Basques. But fundamentally, it's Russia. And this was the same case. Russia played the same role in the 90s with Bosnia. And they were defending the former Yugoslavia. I think there are political considerations why Kosovo, that has been now the outcome of its independence, have been in coordination with the European Union. It has not been it will not be a unilateral decision. I think it's very important. They will be accompanied by the European Union. I understand they're sending about 1,500 people there, not only policemen, judges, etc., to make easier, lawyers, to try to make it as smooth as possible. Oil is playing, the Gazprom issue with Serbia is playing an important and interesting role. Again, business is business in foreign policy.
Well, that's a question, I think, that has to be viewed from what our expectations were in 1993, when in fact the ICTY was established, versus what they are obviously today. In 1992, when the first question of the ICTY was brought up, I think Ambassador Arria, Diego, will remember that we knew that this was really an excuse for inaction. In other words, the promise was, well, we'll deliver justice to the bad guys sometime in the future. But today, we cannot do much more. It's not in our interest. So by promising justice in the future was a way to excuse inaction in 1992. Fortunately, I think the ICTY, in fact, did become reality. And maybe Diego can expand with what the discussion was within the Security Council, but my impression was that many within the Security Council did not consider the promise of the tribunal to be very real until maybe in the middle of 1993, with the help of Madeleine Albright, with the help of Sharif Bassioni, it did become reality. And as I remember, you were also now witness against Milosevic during his recent trial. So what's your impression?
Well, I agree completely with Mo. I tell you, if I give you a personal reflection on this, I was one of the last witnesses against Milosevic for the prosecution. So I went to The Hague. The prosecutor called me one day and said, would you like to come to The Hague? We need you, etc. And I said, why don't you call the permanent representatives of the permanent members of the Security Council? He said, because they said that they could not anticipate the Srebrenica massacre. And I said, well, they're lying. We all knew it. They're just lying. So I went to The Hague. I remember I arrived to The Hague around 5 o'clock. Afternoon, I went to my hotel and I asked where was the tribunal. And they told me the tribunal is 6-7 blocks away. So I walked to the tribunal. It was raining a little bit. And I stood outside the building. It's a great building, not a great building, but a great building, which was before an insurance company. And I looked at the building and I said, my God, 10 years ago, I raised my hand. I was one of the sponsors to create the tribunal. And people thought that we'll never be able to try anybody. This was just pour la galerie. And I looked the other side of the street and I said, and 50 blocks down there is Milosevic. We negotiated with him. He thought he would never leave. He was so arrogant. And tomorrow, I'm going to be a witness against him. So I wrote a letter to my young daughters telling them, of the feelings that I had, that international justice could take some time, but at the end, it had some consequences. So the balance for me, I think, is very important. I find that it was a very important and significant precedent, and we hope it will not end before we get the Mladic and Karadzic, who are the two main perpetrators, before the court.
But it seems that there was a particularly important role that was played by Latin and Caribbean states in this era, and of course yourself personally. What was the motivation of the Latin American and Caribbean states and you for getting involved in somewhere half across the world? There was no direct economic interest. There was really minimal political interest. Was this the rebirth of the New World Order? Was this some sort of new optimism? Was this notion of legality that has become so important in many Latin American states? Or was it something else that maybe we're all missing?
I think it was if I can put it in two words, it was a human reaction to the massacres being committed against Moro. The same question was put to me by Tariq Aziz. I was the president of the Security Council, and Tariq Aziz said to me,
very frequently during the struggles of Bosnia and Herzegovina, used to invite me into the little back room that was reserved for the non-alignment, the caucus. Actually, one of the countries, if I remember, Zambia, was not Muslim-dominated. Actually, there were a few there who were... Djibouti was Muslim-dominated, but many of them were not. On the other hand, you were the leadership. But there was also, of course, at that time, still something called the non-aligned movement. Has the non-aligned movement disappeared from the world scene, and is it being replaced by something else?
Well, when we had the non-aligned conference in Accra, we tried to get from the non-aligned movement to censor and to criticize Milosevic. We couldn't.
Right.
They refused to do it. Because Milosevic had also, like Chavez, have finance school here, a soccer field here and there, etc. in Africa. So the African countries would not attack Yugoslavia, even when they were massacring the Bosnians. That's fact. I think it's weaker. The times where, I must tell you this, I always admire Mo greatly because he was there at the beginning, Then I see this guy who comes to talk to me with so much passion about the region, and I must admit years after that he influenced me greatly in my action in the Security Council, because he specialized himself and feed good information to all of us.
Well, it was the first effort at propaganda. No, I think when you have right on your side, maybe it's a little bit easier.
But
I appreciate
definitely
that.
It is weaker. It's weaker because its main members have weakened the institution, and I think that it's been not.
That's paradoxical, is it not?
Yeah, but they haven't done it by accident. They have done it by design, and now the permanent members are not together like they were in that time. And that makes a very weaker organization, and nobody wants a strong secretary general. They want a secretary. They don't want a secretary general. And I would say, that if the secretary general is not ready to use the moral pulpit of the authority of his post, the United Nations will always be weak. And I think that no secretary generals, probably since Hammarskjöld, have not used the moral pulpit so extensively as they should.